Welcome back, folks, to Classic Mario, Remake or Rebreak. This time we'll be looking at the first game in the Yoshi series, Yoshi's Island for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System, as well as its remake, Super Mario Advance 3 for the Game Boy Advance. After yet another critical and commercial success with Super Mario World, Nintendo laid low on their flagship franchise for quite a while, releasing no new main series Mario titles on their flagship 16-bit console. While Mario continued to hop and bop in the Game Boy in titles like Super Mario Land and Super Mario Land 2 The Six Golden Coins, you wouldn't see a major release on a console until 1996's Super Mario 64. In the meanwhile, Nintendo began experimenting with the franchise to see what sorts of new venues their chubby plumber could fit into. Mario raced against Luigi, Yoshi, Bowser, the Princess, Toad, and Donkey Kong Jr. in the SNES classic Super Mario Kart. He taught kids history, geography, and how to type in a barrage of educational games. But then Nintendo took a gambit in 1994 and decided to give Wario, the villain from Super Mario Land 2, his own spin-off game, Wario Land, which received general acclaim from critics and fans alike. With this success under their belt, it only made sense to give fan-favorite character Yoshi his own spin-off game as well. And in 1995, Yoshi got his own game, Super Mario World 2, Yoshi's Island for the Super Nintendo. This game has since become known as one of the most beloved games of all time, and the GBA version currently holds a 91 out of 100 on Metacritic. To put that in perspective, folks, Yoshi's Island has a higher fan score than The Last of Us, a game that received universal critical and commercial success. And when my brother and I played this game for the first time, we also thought it was great. We used to fight over the cartridge all the time. Hell, I remember how excited I was for the sequel back in 2005. So when I sat down to record footage for this game, I was expecting the same greatness I experienced all those years ago. So did I find it? Well, let's find out. As usual, let's start off with the story. Yoshi's Island is the only classic Mario game to be originally released with an opening cutscene. And it's a pretty damn good cutscene at that. We open in dusky skies and see a stork carrying a pair of brothers to their parents. But suddenly they were attacked by a Koopa wizard! Introducing Kamek, a character I mentioned in the last review, and probably one of my favorite characters in the entire franchise. The extent this guy will go to achieve his goals is nothing short of admirable. He's made appearances in many Mario games and spin-offs over the years, a brief cameo in Super Mario Galaxy, a main villain role in New Super Mario Bros. Wii. He antagonizes you in Paper Mario Sticker Star in what's likely his most snarky appearance yet, and he even makes a prominent appearance in Mario & Luigi Partners in Time, which I still maintain is the darkest Mario game ever made, as well as a sort of quasi-sequel to Yoshi's Island. Anyways, Kamek, knowing that the two babies will cause him trouble in the future, attempts to take them from the stork, but accidentally knocks one of them into the ocean below. Meanwhile, Yoshi is taking a walk when one of the babies suddenly lands on his back.
Hey guys, guess who made this week's cover of Stupid Coincidence magazine?
It's Mario, as it were, and the other baby that Kamek snagged was Luigi. Yoshi takes the baby back to his other pals, and together they decide to make their way across the dangerous depths of the island, reach the Koopa Kingdom, rescue baby Luigi from the clutches of Kamek, and help reunite the Mario brothers with their parents. Upon realizing his mistake, Kamek sends out the entire Koopa Kingdom to look for the missing baby. After 4 games with Bowser kidnapping the princess, this story is a refreshing change of pace that still doesn't turn the entire universe on its head like Mario 2. The biggest difference you may notice right off the bat is the art direction. When Shigeru Miyamoto, Mario and Donkey Kong creator and producer, was approached to make Yoshi's Island, he was told to make it pre-rendered like the popular Donkey Kong Country games. Miyamoto, who was somewhat critical of DKC's success, chose to stylize the graphics as though they were drawn by crayons and felt pens. Nintendo approved the art direction and the game went into production. As much as I love DKC's pre-rendered graphics, I also really like Yoshi's Island's more hand-drawn direction as well. It's a good-looking game, certainly better looking than Super Mario World or even All-Stars for that matter. There's not much of a graphical difference between the two versions, both look about as good as the other. The music is kind of a mixed bag for me. Like the others before, Yoshi's Island only has a handful of tracks, and despite this game being originally released in 1995, the instrument quality doesn't sound as good as it could have been, but that just might have been intentional. Every track in this game kind of has an old-timey flair to it, sort of like watching a cartoon from the late 30s or 40s. The athletic theme, which I rated number 9 in my top 10 SNES songs video, has sort of a Scott Joplin ragtime feel going for it. Listening to the music box theme from the opening cutscene also invokes a steady rush of unadulterated nostalgia. And I think that's the sort of style that Koji Kondo was going for, hence the instruments. Do I think it's a particularly impressive or memorable soundtrack? Not necessarily. but as a tool for creating atmosphere and triggering emotion, I think it does a pretty good job. As far as the differences between the SNES and GBA versions go, I think that this remake is the most faithful yet when it comes to sound. Advance 2 did a pretty good job as well, but there were definitely some clear differences. But Advance 3 sounds almost exactly the same. There are a couple of minute differences here and there, but I think even the most stringent of purists will be satisfied. On one hand, I'm kind of disappointed as I like hearing remixes of video game soundtracks on different consoles, but it's nothing I'll lose sleep over. As far as sound effects go, they're virtually the same, but there is one important difference. In the original, Yoshi makes sounds similar to those of his Super Mario World appearance, but in the remake, he uses voice clips from Yoshi's story. I honestly prefer the latter, as I think the happy-go-lucky angle works best when it comes to Yoshi's character. The gameplay, as you might expect, is quite different from other games in the Mario franchise. You take control of the many Yoshis, who control differently here than even in Super Mario World. Like before, Yoshi can lick up enemies, but this time he'll also turn them into eggs, which you can throw to defeat enemies or activate switches. Yoshi can also ground pound to bash in stumps or soft dirt as well as damage enemies. If you hold down the jump button while in midair, you can do a flutter jump, which allows Yoshi to float across chasms and make long jumps. It's pretty useful, and I'm not gonna lie, playing with Yoshi in World feels really awkward without this ability. Instead of question blocks, levels in Yoshi's Island are clustered with question clouds, which will do a variety of things when activated with an egg. Sometimes you'll get goodies like coins and other collectibles, and other times it will create pathways. Yoshi will occasionally take a page from Kirby and undergo a number of transformations. There's a helicopter, which allows Yoshi to fly through the air, a mole tank, which allows you to dig through sand and dirt, a submarine, which allows Yoshi to navigate his way through treacherous waters, a train, which allows Yoshi to cling to walls and find hidden goodies, and a car, which I think only shows up in one level and really isn't all that remarkable. The transformations only last a few minutes or so, but they do throw some variety into the mix. In rare occasions, Baby Mario will jump into action, allowing you to turn invincible and run on walls and over spikes. This maybe happens like 5 times in the whole game, but the variety is still welcomed. Unlike the other Mario games where you had a limited number of hits before you died and were sent back to a checkpoint, Yoshi doesn't have a life bar in the traditional sense. Getting hit will knock Baby Mario off your back, and he'll start crying, alerting Kamek's forces of his whereabouts. After 10 seconds, a group of flying sniffets called toadies will swoop in and take the bugger off to Kamek's castle. Luckily, Yoshi can rescue him before that happens, and the timer will automatically recharge to 10 seconds. Yoshi can pick up stars to charge the timer up to 30 seconds. Most of the enemies aren't all that threatening, though a number of recurring Mario enemies show up here. Shy Guys, the little mask guys from Mario 2, would become the iconic grunt troop of the Yoshi series. They have a number of variations in this game: Fly Guys, Fat Guys, Still Guys, Toadies, etc. And other baddies like Crazy Daisies, Bumpties, Goonies, Ravens, and Flutters all come from Yoshi's Island. While there's certainly a large variety of baddies to fight, because of the timer system, none of them really pose much of a threat. Most of the time you're gonna die from falling in bottomless pits, pencil spikes, lava, and those surprise motherfucker giant chain chomps. Because of this, you might think that Yoshi's Island is a pretty easy game compared to the rest, and you're only half right. Yoshi's Island is the most completionist-oriented of all the games we've played so far. Hidden in each level are 5 flowers, 20 red coins, and if you can find them all and cross the goal with 30 seconds on your timer, you'll receive 100 points and fully complete the stage. While this sounds pretty straightforward, it's actually really convoluted. Flowers are extremely well hidden, the red coins look just like regular coins, and having 30 seconds on your timer really requires you to avoid enemy attacks. If you can get a certain aggregate score in each world, you'll unlock a bonus game in an extra level. The bonus games allow you to pick up items you can use from the pause menu, as well as an opportunity to score extra lives. If you can 100% every single level in the game, you unlock a secret ending of some kind, though I believe it's only in the GBA version. So in that sense, you might say that Yoshi's Island is a lot like Kirby's Epic Yarn, where the challenge doesn't necessarily come from the constant threat of death, but rather trying to complete stages all the way through. The game rewards skilled players with bonus games and extra levels, while also not punishing beginners who just want to play through the game like normal and see what it has to offer. So what do I think of this system? I'm what you might call a semi-completionist. If we're talking about achievement or trophy hunting in modern games, then I'm not interested. But if we're talking about star coins or red star rings or getting 100% in a Metroid game, then I'm all for it. I like collecting these sorts of things because it gives the player an incentive to explore things all the way, making the experience a lot more in-depth. While I'm really open to this approach to game design, I think Yoshi's Island takes things just the slightest bit too far. There's absolutely nothing more frustrating than exploring a level to the best of your abilities, then coming to the goal ring and finding out you missed exactly 2 stars. Under normal circumstances, I would just replay the levels and find what I missed, but there are a number of barriers that prevent me from wanting to do so. First, this game has a system similar to Super Mario World, where if you don't grab everything, it all resets and you're back to square one. Second, Yoshi's Island has this infuriating habit of sealing off previous areas, so if you miss something on a previous screen, then tough shit, you can't go back and grab it because there's an invisible wall in the goddamn way. None of this would be so bad, except Yoshi's Island suffers from what some call me Johnny might call Sonic Heroes syndrome, which I'll get into as I go along. Yoshi's Island has a total of 48 story required levels, spread out over 6 worlds of 8 levels each. While that might sound disappointing compared to the 96 levels playable in World, I think it's still fine. I'm down with having a bunch of short choppy levels like in Mario 3 World, or having a smaller number of more in-depth levels like in Sonic the Hedgehog or Mega Man. All that matters to me is the level design and how much fun the levels are to plow through. The problem with Yoshi's Island isn't that it doesn't have enough content. Oh no, it's quite the opposite actually. Have you ever played a game where at first it was really interesting and you were pumped to play it, but by the end you feel like it maybe went on a couple of hours too long? Kingdom Hearts 2, wink wink wink? Well, Yoshi's Island is a good example of what I'm talking about. To place things in perspective, while trying to collect the Dragon Coins in Super Mario World, it took me about 8 hours or so to play through every stage and beat the game. While playing Yoshi's Island like normal and maybe picking up the collectible goodies I could along the way, it took me about 10.5 hours to beat this game. In Mario 3 and World, each level was about 1.5 to 2 minutes long, depending on what kind it was. In Yoshi's Island, each level can take anywhere from 10 to 20 minutes to plow through, and with 8 levels per world, it takes about 2 hours to play through the later worlds. Yeah, that's a long ass fucking time, isn't it? So that means that when I fully explore a level to the best of my abilities and maybe turn up a score of 94 or so, I don't exactly feel like wasting another 15 minutes of my life to play through everything I already did and try to scour for what I missed. Now, to be fair to the game, collecting all the goodies is completely optional, and I'm sure that if I ignored everything, it wouldn't have taken me 10.5 hours to beat this game. But even just playing the game like normal, it feels too long. World 1 is your average grassy plains area, with a few underground areas mixed in. Here you learn the controls, deal with the number of the recurring baddies, and get acquainted with all the skills you need to make it through the game. World 2 was also a grassy plains area, except this time it's a little more mountainous. World 3's got some kind of swampy jungle theme going for it. World 4 is also a grassy plains area, except this time it's all red and sunny. Hooray! World 5 is a snow and mountain themed world, which by this point is an absolute blessing to see something new, but at the same time you feel like the game should have already been over. World 6, the Koopa Kingdom, is dark, dank, lava-filled, and contains by far the longest levels in the game. Compared to the likes of Mario 3, which introduced new aesthetic themes and stage hazards with each world, all the areas in Yoshi's Island just kind of blend together, making the game drag. The level design in general is good in that there's plenty to find and lots to do and see, but because they're so long and have so much shit to find in them, I find myself yawning and wanting to take a break by the time I get to World 3. It's hard to explain, but despite the new game mechanics like the flutter jump or throwing eggs, Yoshi's Island feels like it lacks the variety that helped the main series Mario games stay fresh and interesting throughout. Maybe it was the shorter levels, or maybe it was the power-ups, or maybe the stage hazards were more plentiful and more interesting. I don't know what it is, but I regret to say that Yoshi's Island can feel more than a little boring at times. Thankfully, the bosses are pretty fun to fight. In fact, I dare say that they're the best of any classic Mario game. Not only are there a lot of them, but they all require a distinct strategy to defeat. Sure, the first couple are pretty basic, but some of the later ones are pretty engaging. Hook-Bill the Koopa, the 4th world boss, is a good example. Not only is he really creepy looking, but his strategy makes full use of Yoshi's moveset. You have to knock him over with your eggs and ground pound on his belly. Naval Piranha is another standout boss. Earlier in his castle, you learn from tutorial blocks that you can skip eggs along the water if you throw them at the right angle. After practicing with it, you face the boss and use that very same skill to defeat him. Another good one is Tap Tap the Red Nose, who you can't defeat directly. Instead, you have to break open these breakout blocks so that he'll fall into the lava and incinerate. While these bosses aren't necessarily challenging, I find that because of the creative boss design and unique moveset, they're very interesting to take on. Unlike Bowser or Wart, who only really made appearances at the end of their respective games, Kamek is a much more involved villain. At the end of every castle, he'll show up and taunt the player, saying that it's only a matter of time before Baby Mario ends up in his clutches. He'll then use his magic to grow normal enemies to gargantuan size, which constitute the bosses in this game. As you progress, Kamek gradually gets more desperate and stressed, to the point where he even tries to take you on himself. That's why I like Kamek so much as a villain. I identify with his goals, I respect his intelligence, I understand the pain and suffering he undergoes to follow through with his plans, but at the same time it gives me a great sense of accomplishment to make it closer and closer to the final goal and see his psyche gradually break down. The final level is one of the most interesting in the game, and wouldn't you know it, it's Bowser's Castle.
Ah, spoiler alert!
So yeah, Bowser was pulling the strings this whole time. Who knew? In the first section, Kamek will try to ram into you while you fly towards the castle's doorstep. In the room after that, you have to throw an egg at the spinning door, which will open up one of 4 pathways. Because of this, each playthrough of this level will be drastically different. This time I picked door number 3, which would have scared the hell out of me as a kid. In this area, a golden Tap Tap the Red Nose chases you while a dark and depressing tune plays in the background. You can't kill him, so your only option is to run like hell and use your eggs to knock him away. But he'll always come back, and those tinsely sounding footsteps still haunt me to this day. Multiple pathways aside, it's still possible to get 100% in this level no matter which you pick. Now that, folks, is how you design a good final level. When you reach the depths of the castle, Kamek will chase you in a last-ditch effort to snag Mario. As you enter the inner sanctum, the evil King Bowser appears to... Yeah, he's also a baby in this game, go figure. Kamek gives Yoshi one last chance to surrender before Baby Bowser wakes up and stomps him into next week and then kicks the poor guy off screen. Damn! Bowser also talks like a whiny little brat, calling Yoshi a green donkey, and attempts to bash Mario off his back so that he can ride him himself. I love the direction they took here with Bowser's character. Kamek is a father figure of sorts that wants Bowser to grow up to be the best he can be, but because he's so busy running things on the little bastard's behalf, Bowser becomes a whiny and self-obsessed bitch that just abuses Kamek for the sake of it. It's very likely that Bowser's self-centered nature stems from how he was brought up as a kid. I don't know, maybe I'm reading too much into all of this, but what I can say is that he's a pretty easy boss. After knocking Bowser on his ass, Kamek will fly back in and chastise Yoshi for his violence. My god, I feel so sorry for the poor guy. I'm being dead serious, folks. Kamek will use the last dose of his magic to grow Bowser to gargantuan size, constituting one of my old-time favorite final boss battles. The music, the atmosphere, even the way you fight him is like no other boss in the game. Yoshi will turn his head towards the background and try to throw giant eggs at giant baby Bowser. And let me tell you folks, there's nothing scarier than seeing this guy get really close. With a couple of successful shots, Bowser's magic will wear off and Kamek will fly him off to safety. And what follows is probably one of my favorite video game endings, if only for the sense of accomplishment. Yoshi unties the stork, who grabs the 2 babies and carries them off while what is quite possibly one of my favorite credit themes plays in the background. Something about watching that stork fly off into the clouds makes me feel all emotional inside. The stork will make a delivery to what looks like a toad house from Mario 3, and the Mario Brothers parents lift them up triumphantly. Our heroes are born indeed. So, yeah folks, this pretty much settles it. The Mario Brothers are from the Mushroom Kingdom and not the real world. So, yeah, Super Mario Brothers Super Show, you're full of fucking shit. After the ending, if you're playing the GBA version, you unlock 6 new exclusive extra levels, as well as the 6 secret levels from the original, provided you got a good enough score in each world. And these levels are actually pretty hard. They also tend to be a lot shorter than the normal ones, which makes me wonder why the hell the regular ones were so goddamn long. So let's wrap up here. Remake or re-break? What's the verdict? Well, this is a case where the remake and the original are so similar that they're practically interchangeable. The SNES and GBA versions look, sound, and play almost exactly the same, with the only real difference being the 6 extra levels added to the GBA version and the Yoshi's Story sound effects. The fact that those are the only differences is a testament to just how polished the original was. On one hand, I'm a little disappointed that there wasn't more added or changed, as that's why I tend to enjoy remakes so much to begin with. But at the same time, I know that some of these changes can annoy fans of the originals. While I don't find that the GBA version is really superior or inferior to the SNES version, but I can say that like Advance 2, it's a really competent recreation of the original that's sure to satisfy anybody. A definite remake in my book. But what about my verdict on the game itself? This review was a pretty challenging one to write because my feelings on the game are so conflicted. On one hand, I really like the story, art direction, musical direction, the depth of character, and the risk this game took with the broader Mario franchise. The bosses are also great, and the final level and ending are really strong as well. But on the other hand, this game can be really boring at times. And all those other strengths aside, if I don't find the game to be consistently engaging throughout, can I call it a truly great game? That's the thing, I don't know. It's a title that's also pretty difficult to revisit, considering its length. I think my problem is that I've overplayed it. If I'd maybe ran through it 2 or 3 times, I wouldn't find it to be as dull as I do now. So that being said, can I recommend it? Well, seeing as my opinion of this game is very much the minority compared to everyone else, I can absolutely say yes. Especially if you're a hardcore completionist and are looking for something that'll keep you busy for a while. There's only one problem. Nintendo has not, as of this review, re-released Yoshi's Island on the Virtual Console. Considering just how much people love this game, that's a genuine surprise to me. So until either version is re-released, you're gonna have to hunt down either of the old carts if you want to play this game. Odds are, if you haven't played this game already, you likely don't own a Super Nintendo. So if you have a DS or DS Lite, the GBA version becomes the clear choice for you. So that pretty much covers Yoshi's Island, and we're now nearing the end of this little marathon, and I can safely say that we've saved the best for last. Join me next time when we take a look at my favorite game of the whole bunch, Super Mario Advance 4, Super Mario Bros. 3. Until then, I'm ExoParadigmGamer, and I hope you enjoyed the review.